I do not have an amendment.
Let me give you my copy. I'm just going to speak to it, not to the detail of it.
All right.
Sorry about that. Hey, how are you?
I do not have, I don't,
It's just technical changes. They were identified when it came through the Senate, but it's too late.
okay,
Give me changes and I'll submit them.
okay.
I don't see any emails from.
Okay. Good morning. Environment and Agriculture Committee members, please take your seats. I don't know if there's anybody out there. Thank you. Thank you. We're doing 302 first. Okay. All right, you want to pass this down this way? Representative Scully, can you pass this down? Okay, we're going to get underway. Representative Barber, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Larry is in the Senate hearing.
Oh, okay, so, all right. So,
Representative Haskins and Representative Gruber, and I believe Representative Potenza are probably going to be
okay.
over in the Senate. We're kind of at cross purposes here, I suppose. Okay.
Mostly populated as a Senate.
I know. We got more people over there. Okay, so we have on the docket this morning our hearing for SB 302. I'm going to open up the hearing for SB 302, requiring background checks for solid waste facility owners. And with us this morning to introduce this bill is Senator Howard Pearl. Good morning and welcome.
Well, good
Welcome
morning.
back.
Thank you. Good morning. For the record, my name is Senator Howard Pearl, representing District 17, and I live in the beautiful town of Loudon. It's great to come back to my old committee here on the House side.
Closer to the mic.
Oh, you having trouble hearing? There we
Yeah,
go. How's
there
that?
you go. Much better.
All right. So Senate Bill 301 or 2.
302.
302. I'm sorry, I have a wrong sheet in here. Senate Bill 302 is a bill that you have seen in the past. This is the third time we're making an attempt at getting this language correct, and it would establish a background check for owners of a solid waste facility. We've worked with New Hampshire DES, especially Director Wimsatt, for several years on this bill now. And each time we've put it in, there's been some issues that have come back from the FBI about the way that they can do these background checks. So we believe we have it right this time. We did identify there was a handful of technical corrections in the, mostly grammatical, in the language that we had passed through the Senate. So I have presented the chair with an amendment that would correct those technical deficiencies. But I'm really going to let Director Wimsatt speak to the details of the bill, if that's all right with you, and he'll walk you through all of the changes that are necessary.
Thank you. So just as a, because we have new members
Sure.
here, just as a, quick background of the bill, this allows background checks to be done through the federal government, and for which purposes?
It's through the state, but it's through the FBI, correct? Yeah, it's the state does the background check, but through the FBI. And it's
Okay.
for the purposes of ownership of a solid waste management facility.
And there's a certain format that the FBI requires?
Yeah, there is. And we've, again, this is our third try at getting this right. And they've had issues with the way we've passed it in previous versions of this. So we believe we've got this right. Again, I want to let Director Wimsatt speak a little more in detail to that process.
Okay, sure. Representative King.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator. I know I understand you want to let the director talk about the process a little bit more, but I'm a new member to this committee, and I'd like to understand what the reasoning is behind this bill at all.
Yeah, this was brought to me by the agency to put in place. And again, I think the director is going to give you a much more historical reasoning behind it and as to why they need it. He'll be a better resource on that than I will be.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative, I'm sorry,
Bixby.
Bixby.
It's been a long morning for all of us already.
No, I'm just,
You drank so much at the
Yeah,
last
at the
Seder that
last Seder,
the
yeah.
mountains are still dancing?
I'm still getting over the Passover Seder, yeah.
Okay, so, this came to us, I believe you were actually on this committee when it came to us first.
I believe I was.
And at that point, it was a minor correction to just allow for the FBI to be involved in background checks because the language we had at that point would have only allowed state review. And then last term, it came back to us because there had been a drafting error in OLS, and something that was supposed to have been in line like 7 was in line 3 or something like that. Don't hold me to the exact numbers.
You have a better memory than I do, I will tell you.
So it didn't even get to the point where it was even actionable by our Attorney General at that point because of that mistake. And we fixed that mistake, and now apparently the Attorney General office has tried to use it, and the FBI has said, "Oops, no, you can't do it that way." So is this now? How do we or does the Attorney General's office have language from the FBI that tells that is in fact what they want that you were able to put into the bill?
Sure, great question, and thank you. And I've in my conversations with Director Wimsatt, that he came back to me and said we need to do this again and get some things fixed. And I requested that he please work with the DOJ and make sure that this time we had the language correct, because this is our third attempt at getting this done. So my answer to you is I believe so, I hope so, and I'm hopeful this is the last time you're going to see me even introducing this bill, and we've got it done right this time.
Okay, and just to be clear, the point of this whole process is that we want to make sure that we don't have people with criminal backgrounds running solid waste facilities.
That is correct.
And I suppose that Director Wimsatt can expand on why we
Right.
might not want to have people with criminal backgrounds running solid waste facilities.
There is some history as to why that would be the case. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Senator Pearl. And
Thank you.
Representative Wheeler, please take your seat. Thank you. Next is Director Wimsatt from DES. Good morning. Welcome back.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mike Wimsatt. I serve as Director of the Waste Management Division for New Hampshire DES, and I'm pleased to be here before you this morning to testify in support of Senate Bill 302. As Senator Pearl indicated, we've been at this for a bit, and my apologies to this body that it's taken us this long to get this to where it needs to be. To go to your question, well, let me go back, and I think I can address almost all the questions that have been raised here that were asked of Senator Pearl. So there's been a longstanding requirement in the statutes for both our Hazardous Waste Management Act and our Solid Waste Management Act that require that when an applicant for a permit to operate a hazardous waste or solid waste facility comes to the agency for a permit, that they submit themselves to a background check. And as I think Senator Pearl suggested, the concern that's been in there for decades, the concern is that there's history of the solid waste industry in particular having some influence from organized crime. And I believe that going back to the 1980s when the legislature passed this initial form of the statute, they had concerns that that would happen in New Hampshire. And so there was a belief that if we provided background checks for the key officers and operators of solid waste facilities and hazardous waste facilities to ensure that they did not have criminal backgrounds, that would help to keep criminal elements out of the management of these facilities. And so that, I believe, that's my understanding, is why this language has been in the statutes for really, I think, at least 4 decades. As Senator Pearl pointed out, it became evident to us before the 2023 session that when the Attorney General's office was attempting to perform these criminal background checks, both for state records and the federal criminal databases, they were running into a roadblock with the Federal Bureau of Investigations that said that the language, they look very carefully before they let you use that system. And they felt that the language in our statutes was insufficient and ambiguous in some areas in ways that made them uncomfortable allowing us to access the federal criminal databases. So Senator Pearl was gracious enough to sponsor Senate Bill 211 in the 2023 session. We worked hard to get that language. We believed we had what we needed. And then when we passed the bill and then attempted to use it, we ran into the same problem with the FBI. Now, I will express some frustration that the FBI is happy to tell us when we don't get it right, but they won't really tell us how to get it right. They're happy to tell us when we get it wrong, but they won't really tell us exactly what it needs to get it right. The closest things to experts that we have in state government, not being able to get, someone to directly vet our language ahead of time at the FBI, is our New Hampshire Department of Safety Division of State Police. And Christine from that office is here in the gallery today if you have specific questions for her. So we had our attorney, Joshua Harrison, at New Hampshire Department of Justice, has gone back and spent time, a lot of time with Department of Safety staff to do the very best we can to get this language right, and we believe we've got that. Subject to, it's a complex bill, there's a lot of language there, so when it was drafted by OLS and was introduced, a careful review of it made it clear that there were about 8 or 10 technical errors, not really substantively changing the effect of the law, but things that needed to be corrected. So Senator Pearl has asked OLS to draft an amendment that will address those issues, and I'm happy to discuss those specific things if you'd like, but in many cases it's just crossing out the word a or moving a line that got placed in the wrong place, or in one case when we're in the hazardous waste management statute, it talks about the solid waste instead of hazardous waste. So it was correcting some of those drafting errors. Essentially, I think it gets us to where we need to be. The key changes in the language from, the substantive changes include specifying who is subject to the records check. That can't be ambiguous, and some of the earlier language made it difficult to decide exactly who in a company or who in a company structure might need to have to submit to a background check. So we've cleaned that up. We also specify which New Hampshire DES officials are to receive the records, the report of that background check. So this bill will do that. And also, it was actually made unnecessarily cumbersome in the original statutory language by involving the Department of Justice in that as kind of a middleman. So we would get an application at DES and we would identify folks who needed to submit to a background check, and then we would have to then give that information to the Department of Justice that would then have to turn it over to state police and to do to conduct the background check. And so what this bill would do would be to take the Department of Justice out of that process, and New Hampshire DES would directly request that to the Department of Safety that background checks be conducted. And that we think is going to be a lot cleaner. And again, all of this was done with careful review from the Department of Justice and the Department of Safety to make sure that we get the language that we need. I guess that's what I would offer on it. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Representative King?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director. So just to be clear, we're not really debating the legitimacy of background checks because that was already in statute. We're really just cleaning up language that's going to allow us to perform these background checks. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. And in case I wasn't clear, if we don't get this language right and we don't pass this bill, we will not be able to conduct federal background criminal investigations. We'll only be able to do it at the state level. We won't be able to access the federal criminal databases.
Follow up?
Follow up.
Another quick question. As far as the background checks are concerned, do they ever look into tangentially related people to the operator? For example, in finance, oftentimes family members aren't allowed to do certain things because of fears of insider trading or something like that with people that work for certain firms. Is there anything like that in regards to this?
It does, the language does require that certain officers, and it gets very specific with respect to the kind of entity it is. So there's certain officers that get identified if it's a LLC, certain ones that get identified if it's a corporation. I don't believe it goes to family members or anything like that, but at least the key officers in a given entity are subjected to this, this background check.
Thank you.
Representative Germana. Representative Sofakidis, please take your seat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director, for taking my question, and I apologize if you addressed it and I missed it. So I understand the need to make this work for the federal background check. I am curious, though, about the deletion on line 32 of page 3, that the cost of any investigation under this paragraph shall be borne by the applicant. Has that been moved around, or are we footing the bill now?
It's still absolutely, all the costs are still borne by the applicant. There's the language elsewhere in the language that covers that. That's why that was deleted, is that it was no longer needed in that section. But it's clear that all the costs associated with setting it up and conducting the background check are to be paid by the applicant.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions? Representative Scully.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming before us. So obviously, one of the first questions I always ask myself is demonstrated need. So you have the statutes in place where you can do the background checks. Has there ever been a permit that's been denied because of a background check that's been done to date?
Yes, there has. I was involved in denying a permit for a hazardous waste facility because one of the officers that were associated with the applicant had been convicted of a felony about 3 years prior.
May I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
All right, thank you. Do you feel like there was a permit that was issued that would not have been issued had this improved screening process been in place?
Well, to be clear, we were conducting background checks up through around, I believe, 2022. So most of the permit decisions that we've made have been included both the state and federal criminal background check. Once this was identified prior to the 2023 session, and we've been working to get it fixed, those background checks have been limited to a state background check because the FBI wouldn't allow access to the federal criminal database.
Go ahead. Representative Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I was late to the party, so you may have already answered this question.
That's all right.
How far back do you go with the background check? How many years?
I confess I'm not that familiar with how the actual background check gets conducted. I will tell you that under our statute, the agency has some discretion to determine, to look at that background check. It's not an automatic denial of the permit. However, there is language that says the agency shall deny or certainly can deny if one of the parties that's subjected to the background check has been convicted or pled guilty to a felony within the last 5 years.
5 years?
But we could look at, again, there may be folks here, possibly the Department of Safety can tell you how far back that background check goes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Director Wimsatt.
You're welcome.
I don't have any other pink cards. Would anybody else like to speak on this bill? Seeing none, Representative Minor, could you grab the blue sheet over there? And do we know at all how many people were in favor and opposed to this bill online? Let me just do a quick check here if I can. Okay, let's see. Okay, we have on the blue sheet one person in favor. And let's see, we have online. Let's see. I don't see the Senate bills here. Okay. I don't have access to any of the Senate bills, so I'm going to close the hearing for SB 302. And I am going to open up the hearing for SB 229. And here again this morning to introduce this bill is Senator Howard Pearl.
Good morning. Good morning again.
Good morning
Still
again.
great to be here. And for the record, my name is Senator Howard Pearl, representing District 17, and I live in the town of Loudon. I am here today to introduce Senate Bill 229. This bill would allow the sale of uninspected bison, red deer, and elk meat and removes the prospective repeal of the provisions governing the sale of uninspected bison, red deer, and elk meat. So a few points I wanted to leave the committee with on the bill. This bill would allow retailers to sell bison, red deer, and elk meat that is currently exempted from USDA inspection. Our current law allows restaurants to sell these products, and there has been interest from a number of retailers in offering these products for sale as well. All labeling and tracing requirements remain the same. Stores would need to label the products as uninspected and maintain a record of which farms they sourced their products from. This language is in line with the legislature's continued goal of finding creative solutions for New Hampshire's farmers to market their products in a safe way. This legislation also removes the sunset on the program to allow the sale of the bison, red deer, and elk meat. And just as a point, there was no opposition to this bill when it came through the Senate, so we passed it through quickly and it's here in front of you today. I'm happy to answer any questions I can. I know we have a couple others here to speak on it as well that are supportive, so thank you.
Representative Bixby.
Yeah, so I was on the committee when the previous bison slaughter regulations were put into effect, and also when I was on the study committee that recommended the legislation for that added red deer and elk to that, and essentially loosened up the regulations on bison, so the prospective repeal amend 2023 18011. I believe that is chapter law, but it's connected to what is the sunset that's in statute. If I'm not mistaken.
I believe you are correct. I'd have to study it a little further to be sure, but I think you're correct.
Okay, so so what is in statute is that, and this is in section 427(2)A, which is the exemptions in the slaughter chapter. Paragraph 4 is effective until July 1st, 2025, and then paragraph 4, the alternative version is will become effective July 1st, 2025 if we don't repeal the sunset. What we're currently working under is that bison, elk, and red deer can be slaughtered on farm for the purposes of sale, and they're exempt from the inspection requirement of slaughter, and the permit this is permitted if there's a designated farm slaughter area on the premises, if the slaughter is humane and done by a owner or full-time or seasonal employee of the farm. It has to happen between September 1st and April 30th. When no more, and it has to be removed to cold storage within 12 hours, and a veterinarian licensed under RSA 332B conducts an antemortem examination of each herd on an annual basis, and documents of that examination are kept on file. And that those documents need to include herd conditions, species, time of inspection, and then the rest of it has to do with essentially maintaining a paper trail of that inspection information, and so that everything that so that that animal could be traced if there was any issue. So one of the things that we talked about in our study committee was that the inspection for bison that had existed up until that time was extremely thorough, and one of the problems was that no one could get a veterinarian to come out and do it on a cycle that would allow that to happen. But the current Section 4 was put in place sort of as a placeholder for us to figure out what we would do that was a little bit less strenuous than what had been previously there, but was a little bit more thorough than a once per year antemortem inspection of the herd. And I'm wondering why you chose not to do anything more thorough than the once per year antemortem inspection.
Well, thank you for the question. I mean, you've done a very good recap of all the things that we put in place, and honestly, it seems to be working what we're doing. And all this bill simply does is, just open that up and allow them to sell into a bigger market. We're always working to try and do that for our local agriculture, and I don't know that we've identified a reason to go any further than what we're doing right now. And certainly, if there's a situation arises that might point us in a different direction, I'd be happy to consider that in the future.
Follow up.
So, do you know how many how many animals have been slaughtered and sold under this under the provision that we're working under right now?
I'm afraid I do not know the answer to that, but we could certainly find out.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Representative Sophocles and then Representative Scully.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be
Senator.
here.
Are all these animals that you're talking about on farms?
Are they currently on farms?
Yes. And how many farms do we have that fit into this?
You know what? Are you going to speak? I think Nick
Okay.
might know a better answer to that than I do. I do not know the number of farms.
Okay, thank you.
I know there aren't a lot, but I do not know the exact number.
Thank you.
Representative Scully.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you again for your testimony before us.
Sure.
Do you know if this type of legislation has been tried in any of other states? And if yes, how is it going there?
Sure. I don't know about other states specifically. I know that some states have their own in-state inspection programs, so it varies an awful lot. But I do know the slaughter situation has been difficult for our state farmers and especially our smaller farmers. And this will be a way I think that we can help them to get their meat to market. It's a very limited approach. It honestly is. We've opened up the slaughter regulations for rabbits and chickens and a few other things to allow on farm. And this is, I think this is just us progressing forward and trying to help our local agriculture to be more profitable and still maintain a level of public safety.
Thank you.
Representative Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for appearing before us today. Chronic waste is a huge problem in some states, such as New York. What type of regulations, what type of control do we have in place to avoid that actually coming to New Hampshire?
Sure. There are regulations about importation of live animals, and we've been successful so far in keeping it out of the state of New Hampshire. And I think if we stay on the path it's going to be a long time before it gets here. I mean, naturally it can move in other species, but the species that we're working with, we've done a good job in protecting that by having those import protections in place.
Representative Bixby.
So, this is kind of a would you believe. The, the elk and red deer herds that are, allowed under current statute, and this is pretty much in the Fish and Game statutes, but the elk and red deer, herds are on closed farms, so, they're required to have thorough fencing around, which, as anyone can tell you, a tree falling in a storm can, make that somewhat permeable, but there is essentially a requirement that you maintain the fences in good condition so you don't have native deer getting in. And the other thing is that you cannot import any new cervids to your farm. It has to be a closed herd, so all the animals in your herd have to be bred out of your current herd.
I do believe that. Those are the protections I was referring to, that I think we have a good program in place. Thank you for the question, though.
Any other questions? Seeing none? Thank you, Senator
Thank you.
Pearl, and we appreciate the work that you've done on this bill.
Well, you're welcome. I've got to run back to one more.
One more question?
It might be a simple no. Have you run this by Steve Crawford or Sean Jasper?
I personally have not, but I can say that they are aware the bill exists and they did not provide any resistance.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I've got to run back to, we have all of your
Yep.
landfill bills on our side, so I got to go back and hear those. So
Okay.
thank you guys for the work.
Gonna go
you do as
talk
well.
trash, huh?
I do.
Okay. Thank you. Good to see you. Please pass our bills. I'd like to call Nick Velas. Is it Velas? Velas. Good morning and welcome to Environment and Agriculture.
Good morning.
And
thank you
you
very
are the owner of Rivervale Farm?
Rivervale Farm in Errol, New Hampshire.
All right.
And I've been raising bison for 30 years now.
Oh, wow.
In Errol. And what started out as a hobby it's grown, and the demand for the meat has risen. It's a great source of protein in that it's 36% higher in protein, less fat than chicken or fish, and they're raised on the farm. We grow our own hay and the like. And over the years, we've been trying to get it more into market. Just for the record, we do give post-mortem tissue samples to the state of New Hampshire as well. So that the veterinary physician or doctor comes out annually, inspects the herd. We send tissue samples for every 5 animals that we slaughter. Okay. And we currently sell from the farm. We currently sell to restaurants. For some reason, it slipped our mind a few years ago. We were thought retail would have been part of it, but we wanted to define the retail that we could sell it out of stores that I think would be good outlets for it. There is a large increase in the demand for bison nationwide because of the quality of meat that it is. So,
Okay. Representative Sofakaitis.
Hi, I am from Alaska, and so we do a lot of with game there, and I'm just wondering, because I've read a lot about bison, but I've never seen one, and I was wondering if it would be possible to drop by and see your farms.
I would love to have you come.
I've heard so many things about bison and how like you need so much more fencing and things like that for them because they're way more aggressive, stronger than
Yes.
other livestock.
Yes.
How did you start your herd?
A lapse of sanity. No, I acquired a dairy farm. I fly fish, and I became very familiar with a trout stream that was on a dairy farm. And the farmer had passed away, and none of the children wanted to continue dairy farming. And I'm not a developer, and I wanted to keep the land open. I didn't want to raise dairy cattle, though. And so and I'm also intrigued of Native American culture. And bison have a fantastic, they live well with the land. They don't impact it like typical bovine, typical cattle. And they create beautiful pastures. And with all that being said, did some research. And interestingly enough, my fencing was my first failure. I by the manual, I followed, I put up single wire fencing, and it did a pretty good job keeping moose out, but not the keeping bison in, but didn't keep the moose out. So we brought in 8-foot fencing, woven wire fencing, high tensile strength, and that's your biggest investment is your fencing. But they are incredible animals. They don't require shelter. They live, they just live naturally out there, and we ran into problems early on when we tried to put them into trailers to bring them to my closest USDA inspection's 3 hours away one way. And it was hard on the animal, hard on everybody. And even the slaughterhouse that you bring them to didn't want to have them because they're just tough to handle. And so we humanely dispatch them, we harvest them, we take them to a state inspection butcher. So there's state inspection there. And we also send tissue samples to Concord. And so there are checks and balances in place. We also label on the label of the meat, the package of meat, that this is not federally inspected, but it is state inspected. So.
I have a question. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Sorry. I just lost my train of thought. How long is their gestation period? And are there hides? Do you use the hides?
Great question. So gestation is that similar to humans, 9 months. And they, as far as the hides, it is tough to find. On occasion, we'll have some of the hides tanned. Other than that, we have to dispose of them. And it's unfortunate because there aren't many tanneries around. The closest one now we're dealing with is in Duluth, Minnesota.
So I have a question about, you say you send, for every 5 animals, you send tissue samples
Yes.
to the state lab, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So do you hold the meat until you get the results of those labs back? What happens if they
Great question.
find something in the tissue samples?
So it's immediate. So there's not a time connection between the sale of that meat and when that tissue sample is inspected, I guess. So
So-
it's kind of left up in the air.
So
actually.
for example, if you received back some word from the state lab saying, oh my goodness, there was XYZ found in this, would you be able to trace
Yes.
the beef that
Yes,
the meat
we keep
that you
a paper
sold?
trail. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Representative Bixby.
So, do you sell any of the meat ground?
Yes.
Okay, so in current statute, it says that every other animal or every second animal with that ground meat would need to be have a tissue sample. Is that something?
It's every 5 animals, I believe.
When bison, elk, or red deer meat is ground for sale, ground meat from every second animal processed shall be tested by the processing facility. So I guess that would be the requirement.
So the state, the inspection of the processing facility inspects that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then for every 5th animal, you send to the state for inspection.
Tissue inspection.
And does that is there a particular part of the animal that is sampled for
I
that?
think the certain vital organs, intestines, yes, but I couldn't tell you what that is. So,
Okay. And is that something that's required in rule, or is that something that you do because it's a good idea?
rule.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I also have a question about how much, what's your volume like?
Yeah, so my goal is about 30 animals a year.
Ah,
Yeah. The demand's growing. I'd like this to expand because it's such a great source of protein. And there's not much industry up there, and it's an ongoing farm, and for small farmers, it's always challenging.
And how many people do you employ to help you do this?
One full time, and then seasonally, like in the summer, probably 2 full-time equivalents. Hmm.
Okay, thank you. Representative Minor.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. What's the hanging weight typically on a bison?
Great question. About 400 to 450 pounds.
Good sized animal.
It is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Bixby.
So one of the issues with bison, I believe, is that they're essentially wild animals, and if you try to transport them, that creates a lot of stress. Is
Yes.
the method that you use to round them up for slaughter and bring them to that designated slaughter area a lower stress level for them?
They have no idea it's coming. Philosophically, I try to. It's minimum handling. They roam. The pasture that they spend most of their times with, that fence is almost 4.5 miles around, so there's quite a room for them to roam. And then we rotate pastures for grazing purposes and to naturally fertilize their hay. And so, with that being said, in the area that like we usually feed them in the morning, and we'll put piles of hay to different areas, and we'll identify the animals, which tend to be at 2 to 3 years of age. It's kind of the 2.5 to 3 is kind of an ideal size, and for the animal that we will dispatch them, basically shoot them 1 inch behind the ear is your best shot placement, and they have no idea it's happening, and it doesn't bother the other animals. And so, in the rules, we also it's the manager that does this, the farm manager who's there, or myself. I typically do not do it though, but he does.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you for coming and testifying on this bill this morning.
And I would welcome all of you to come visit someday. They're beautiful animals. They really are, especially in June when they're calving.
All
It's
right.
beautiful.
Wonderful. Would anybody else like to speak on this bill? May I have the blue sheet, please?
So, Madam Chair, I asked the commissioner if he could either convey to the state vet that we were having this hearing today, and I'm assuming that because no representative from the department came forward, they don't seem to have a position on this, unless we've gotten any emails from them or anything like that.
I have not heard from their office at all, and I'm sure that they were aware of this hearing. So, seems to me that they don't have an issue with passage of this.
And it sounds like there's more inspection in rules than we have in the statute.
Yeah.
So that makes me more comfortable about it.
Okay, good enough. We have one person who signed on the blue sheet in favor. And with that, I'm going to close the hearing on SB 229. And I will open up the hearing on SB 50, establishing a committee to study the regulation of private animal boarding facilities. I believe that Senator Ward let's see, I have this bill here. This is Senator Ward's bill. Yeah. Typically we have legislators introduce bills. Is that? Oh, Senate staff may. Thank you for clarifying that, because I've only known that legislators were allowed to introduce bills. But have a seat, sir. And your name?
Thank you, Chairwoman Aaron, members of the committee. My name is Grant Bossy, Deputy Chief of Staff of the New Hampshire Senate. and this is my first time in front of Environment and Agriculture this year. I am here to introduce Senate Bill 50 on behalf of Senator Ruth Ward, the bill's prime sponsor. She had expected to introduce this herself, but Senate Education is running a little long this morning, so she sent me upstairs to do this on her behalf. This came out of a constituent who dropped a dog off at a boarding facility, and the dog was lost and unfortunately never recovered. And the constituent found there really weren't a lot of rules in place to know what the recourse was in that case and if there were any licensing requirements that had not been met. So he suggested a study committee. This bill would establish a committee to study the regulation of private animal boarding facilities. The committee would be tasked with first, reviewing current laws and regulations pertaining to private animal boarding facilities. Second, identifying how facilities are licensed and how incidents are reported when an animal has been harmed, lost, or killed in their care. Third, identifying gaps, if any, that may exist in current rules and regulations, and fourth, soliciting testimony from any person or organization with relevant information or expertise. If you have questions for Senator Ward, I'll make sure to get you an answer. And Senator Ward, thanks you for your consideration and support of Senate Bill 50.
Thank you. So this came out of a situation where somebody's animal died?
Was lost.
Oh, was lost.
And with no real good explanation on what happened.
Okay. Was the animal ever recovered or found? Or
Unfortunately, no.
was any legal action taken by the owner of the animal to the person who was taking care of this animal?
I don't believe so, and I think it's because the owner didn't know what regulations, what recourse there was in the law, and that's why there was a request to study the law as it is, and if there are any gaps that would fill that in.
I see. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none?
Thank you.
You very much for introducing the bill. Anybody who wishes to speak on this bill, please fill out a pink card and bring it up to us here. I have Trish Morris, who supports the bill. Good morning, Ms. Morris. Welcome to Environment and Agriculture. Please state your name and where you're from. Thank you, and put your microphone on.
Nope, it should be red.
There you
It's
go.
red. There we go. Thank you. Thank you all very much for allowing me to come to, speak before you today. My name is Patricia Morris. I am an attorney. I practice animal law in New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts. I teach animal law at the University of New Hampshire School of Law, and I have sat on the Governor's Commission for the Humane Treatment of Animals for almost 20 years, and I chaired it for 13 years. I have 3 dogs. I have 3 horses, so I'm kind of familiar with most of the laws in the state. I represent different types of clients. I represent boarding facilities. I represent individuals. I represent corporations. And I'm here today in support of developing this committee. I want to give a little bit of background. And in all candidness, I am representing the constituent that did bring this forward to Senator Ward, and civil legal action has been taken in this matter in a superior court. And that's just went underway at this point in time. But quickly, I want, as far as this bill establishing a committee, what we're really looking at is to determine if we need to regulate these private animal facilities, and if we do, at what level and by whom. So it's really a fact-finding type of mission, and identifying those stakeholders and maybe even bringing us to the table to help write legislation if we decide that this is necessary to do. Some statistics: the average household in New Hampshire spent $4,500 on each pet they owned last year. They're expecting in 2025, New Hampshire pet owners will spend $1.4 billion. So this is a huge industry within the state of New Hampshire. 52% of households are pet owning. So there is at least half the population that have pets. What we're seeing right now, I've had in the past 5 years, 37 cases filed, either demand letters and or civil actions that have to deal with cats, dogs, or horses in kennels or daycares that have resulted mostly in deaths or significant injuries, and veterinary bills. This is mainly due to contagious diseases spreading. Recently, we had an RSV, a respiratory virus, that passed very quickly, killing a lot of dogs, and it was a big front line. And it has become, there's a lot of zoonotic diseases that are transferred from animals to humans: rabies, Lyme's, tuberculosis, those types of things. When my constituent, or my client, the constituent who brought this forward, dropped his dog off, and he is here today, there's nowhere for a person to go to take their dog, or their fur babies, as you may call them, to go look up and see what is a boarding facility like. Right now, we regulate pet vendors, pet stores, commercial breeders, those types of things, but we don't regulate boarding facilities, businesses that say, I will take care of your dog, and you will pay me for that, or I will do that for your cat or your horse, or your whatever the animal might be. And so you can go on social media, you can go to Yelp or Google and read a review possibly, but those are easily manipulated. So what we're looking at is what recourse or what type of licensing or what type of information can we gather and find so that the typical New Hampshire pet owning citizen can go somewhere and get a reputable idea of, yes, this facility has been licensed by the state or it's been inspected by the town. We don't know what level that would be at, but there would be some sort of licensing or inspection, because had we been able to get onto this person's property, the boarding facility's property, when this dog was declared missing, we would have been able to act a lot quicker. But despite the police department showing up with us requesting permission to look at the property, and my client, we were turned away, and there was no availability or no way we could get on to that because it was private property. If it was licensed or by the town or by the state, we would have a right to go on and inspect, or the police would. So that's what we're really looking at here, is trying to determine, is there a need for some sort of licensing for inspection here? And if it is, what level do we need and who would be responsible for that? So I'm also happy to donate my time to the subcommittee as well, and help in any way I can. So I'm happy to take questions.
Sure. Representative Bixby.
And do you know how this is handled in other states, particularly nearby states?
We do. So Massachusetts just recently passed a bill like this, and there is a licensing requirement by the state, by the Department of Agriculture there, that is required. If you can't just hang a shingle, for lack of a better word. And that was one of the outline bills that we did send Senator Ward so she could take a look at that, and that would be a nice point of guidance. There's some other states further out west that are doing it as well, but I don't think they're quite in the same ideological kind of as New Hampshire. So I think Massachusetts sets a really good example for us, and can help set some guidelines on maybe what works and what doesn't work. Thank you.
To what extent, I mean, I have a dog and 2 cats, and I have a person who comes and takes care of them when I'm not around, whether it's for a day or for an extended time. And I do my due diligence to check out the person who is going to be caring for my fur babies, for lack of a better word, and got references. I do a little contract with them to, and leave instructions that if something happens, please contact the veterinarian and take them and, to be taken care of, et cetera, et cetera. To what extent, I mean, there's personal responsibility here for your animals as well. I guess I'm at a loss to say that, licensure is going to solve a problem like that.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. There is the onus on the owner as far as doing due diligence. The question is, where does that due diligence lie? We're not talking about a parking garage or where we're going to park a car and leave it. These are animals that can, that are parts of our family that people deeply, deeply care about, and you'll hear about that. Like I said, right now, my clients mainly will go on to Yelp or Google and try reviews. We have found and have photos of those being altered so they can be taken away and out. Right now, if we're going to go buy a pet, where do most of my clients go? They're going to go to the Department of Agriculture and make sure that these are licensed facilities that are abiding by certain standards of care and certain abilities to be inspected. Rescues and shelters, the same exact thing. So I think we're looking at those boarding facilities that are fantastic, and there are some great boarding facilities, both from the livestock side to the household pet side. are already in compliance with that. That's just going to help them stand out and just say, yes, we are open to inspection. We have been licensed by the town, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be those that are flying under the radar that kind of say, oh, I've got a spare bedroom. I'm going to throw a couple dogs in there. You'll hear testimony from my client who these dogs were all thrown in a barn and rarely cared for. And there was no recourse for him other than now taking the very timely, emotional, and costly path of civil litigation in order to really, he just wanted to know what happened and we never found out. But in order to recoup those costs, but again, I don't really think it's about the money. It's just about, wow, he doesn't want this to happen to somebody else. And like I said, I've had this happen in the past 5 years, 37 times in the state. We've had 37 cases of that. And I think the final part about that is the public health, welfare, and safety, where if you're getting these diseases like the avian flu right now that are going unchecked and passing, we recently had a horse stable out where I live in the Lakes region that had an outbreak of strangles, which is deadly. And instead of being quarantined and reported to the state, they went to a local massive regional horse show exposing thousands of horses. And when they came back and it was finally found out this is what happened, had they been inspected, had we been able to get the state veterinarian out there or a vet onto the property to test, we would have been able to shut down that cross-contamination. So I think there's a big public health, welfare, and safety issue as well there too.
Representative Bixby.
So, is there a difference between the ability that someone has to vet someone who might be coming into their house and taking care of the animals on site versus being able to figure out and do that due diligence for someone for what seems to be a business that is in the business of taking care of animals on a sort of a temporary boarding facility basis?
Yeah, and then this, thank you, Representative Bixby. This would only apply to boarding facilities, so it would not be within your own home. It would be a boarding facility. And just like restaurants are inspected for health reasons, and I said, shelters and rescues, it would just be a business adhering to the business and what they say their business is, but it would not be coming into your house. And I have a housekeeper, sitter, pet sitter too.
Follow up.
I guess the point of my question is, if you're having someone come into your house, you have a certain ability to vet that person that might be greater than, or would your ability to vet that person be greater than your real ability to vet a business that is sort of somewhere else in town?
I think it would. The responsibilities and demands are a little bit different as far as that, because they're on your property where your pet or your animal is more familiar with. So there is a difference in that, but it wouldn't apply to that. It would only apply to the facilities.
I'm just thinking about what I'm looking for is the information that the pet owner can get about someone.
I think it would be the same.
But do you think that if we did do legislation for licensing, that would provide an easier avenue for vetting a business where you might take your pet?
I do. I think that if we were going to put someone, giving them exclusive care, custody, and control of an animal, wherever that might be, that would be, I would want to know that. I would want to be able to make sure, I'm sure if my client had seen priors that had happened at the sporting facility, and there have been several deaths of dogs that were not disclosed recently, right before and since this has happened at the same facility, had he known that and been able to find that out, he would have boarded elsewhere, but he was unable to find that out. So I hope that kind of answers, but okay. Thank you.
Representative Scully.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for coming before us. Did I understand you correctly that you said that there were how many cases of animal injury or death in the last 5 years in New Hampshire?
That I know of that I was involved in, I've had 37, and they weren't, I have to fix myself. It wasn't 37 individual cases, it was 37 animals, and they were mainly dogs. In the past 5 years that I've had clients that have come to me and said, I either want my vet bills paid for because they were so expensive, or my dog was dead, and I want to pursue whatever I can. And again, most of my clients aren't really looking for the check at the end of the day. They just want to have some sort of way to warn other people and then tell other people.
Follow up, please.
Follow up, yeah.
All right, so if you have been involved with 37 cases personally, I'm assuming that the issue is even bigger than that.
I'm agreeing with you, yes.
Thank you.
So you said 37 cases, mostly dogs, in the past 5 years. Were those all having to do with boarding facilities?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Does property law apply here? If you experience a total loss because caused by someone else of like your car or something like that that you have entrusted or even accidentally, do the same laws apply to pets?
Mostly. So there are ways you can unlike a car, for example, there are certain ways you can dispose of a car however more or less you want to, but you can't do that with a dog. There are care requirements under our cruelty laws that require you to treat dogs as property in a certain way, which you don't have that for a car. If you don't get your oil changed for 10 years in your car, you're not going to get in trouble for that. I mean, you lose your car. But you have to give sustenance, care, shelter, et cetera, to your animals. And that's what we're seeing here. The other part with property, the issue with animals is what's the fair market value? I love my dogs. I know they have no fair market value, but I just went and I may have spent anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 working with Granite State Dog Recovery on surveillance, trying to locate where my dog went, or I may have put in veterinary bills up to $5,000 trying to save the dog, and it didn't. But that you can't get that back because that's the fair market value that the property laws do. So that's some differences with the animals as far as property is concerned. But generally, yes, property laws do hold.
Any other questions? No? Seeing none, thank you for testifying
you
this
all.
morning.
By the way, it's been a while since you've been before this committee, and it's nice to see you back.
Thank you, Representative Bixby. I appreciate it.
Okay, Chris Schemmett. Good morning, Mr. Schemmett. Please state your name and where you're from.
Good morning, committee. This is my first time here. I'm here for the bill SB 50. I live in Jaffrey, New Hampshire. I was displaced when my girlfriend died of COVID when I was living in California. I've been here for 3 years. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I served 2 tours in Vietnam. I'm currently dealing with cancer from Agent Orange and toxic materials. I deal with the VA. The VA is not transparent. They don't help vets. A lot of vets, my friend vets from Iraq and Vietnam, have emotional support dogs. I have evidence here that my dog was my best friend, as we all know. I was going in for spinal stenosis surgery on the 27th of November. I dropped my dog off at this dog sitter who I had used before, and the surgery was a success. But unbeknownst to me, I was throwing blood clots, and I had to be rushed to Lebanon in the cardiovascular department there. I had surgery for 2 hours to remove blood clots from my exposure to radiation for my prostate cancer. So what happened is I had given my dog sitter a month's supply of food, but I was in hospital longer than a month. I was in rehab longer than a month. I would communicate with her, but I wouldn't hear from her for like 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. I went to pick up my dog last Monday, and he was dead. She handed him to me. She didn't have any remorse. She didn't have any signs of sympathy. I have so many different mixed emotions. My dog has helped me a lot. He's gone. I didn't see him. I feel that needs to be regulation, because even though you vet your dog, you vet your animal, this person is just a rogue individual. She lives in Peterborough, and here's the deal. To make an analogy, if you have a child You wouldn't send your child to an unregistered daycare center, would you? You would send it, those people would be vetted. If they're pedophiles, perverts, or whatever they are, you would know that. You don't know the quality of the people that are taking care of your dog, because this woman apparently, you're alert, you're aware of what's going on. You see the nuances with the dog, but I don't think she was watching my dog very carefully, because it's like being in a hospital. I have a friend of mine who's an Iraq vet dealing with his issues from his medical issues, and I watched his nurse. And there are some nurses that they're very observant and they see what's going on. You see what's going on with the patient, and you have that intuition as to what's going on, and you see. And it's like you're aware of your surroundings and such. And this woman that I trusted my dog to, she really didn't take care of him. I'm here to represent the Iraq vets, all the vets who have emotional support dogs. I have documentation for it. Because when you go to war and you see the horrific things that this country makes you do to kill innocent people in the name of whatever propaganda there is, you'll never be the same. I have chronic pain in my heart. What I did in Vietnam, and the things I witnessed and the things that have gone on. I'm not here to talk about my trauma, but having a dog who loves you for just you is worth more than any amount of money in the world. And I'm here to support this bill, and if anybody wants to talk to me or tell me their story, I'm here for those people who can't speak. Because as a Vietnam veteran, they got this wall in Washington, D.C., 84,000 people. But you know what? There's been over 400,000 veterans who have committed suicide because the VA is not transparent and the VA is not proactive. I'm not here to talk about the VA, but I'm here to talk about those vets who can't speak and can't defend themselves and don't know how to speak. I've been dealing with the VA since I was called a baby killer when I landed at JFK in November of 1971. My dog was my best friend. I went to pick him up. She had no remorse. She didn't say she was sorry. And I think this bill is important because we need to be protected. I'm sitting here crying, listening to this woman that these dogs, there's dying and not being able to go in and check them out. It's kind of like, to make an analogy, you know who the biggest perpetrator of being a puppy mill and a dog mill? The Amish people. The Amish people have horrible conditions for dogs and cats, but we're not in Pennsylvania. We're here in New Hampshire. So I'm emotionally tormented. I'm in pain. I have to deal with it. I got chronic pain issues. I still have blood clots. I have to deal with what I have to deal with. I don't get any help from the VA, but my dog was my love, and I miss him. And my heart goes out to any of you in the committee or in this room who have had family members commit suicide or are dealing with issues from being in the military. So ask me a question. I'm here.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony this morning, and we appreciate you. Representative Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your service. I don't want to open up old wounds, but how did your dog die? Was there any explanation? Did you not feed it? Was it sick? This doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, my dog had a certain diet. She didn't contact me that the food was running out. And my dog, some dogs are finicky, some cats are finicky. She did not say, I'll go out and buy food. She said, your dog's acting funny. I think I need to take him to the vet. She didn't take him to the vet. My dog is buried. He's in the ground, and I'm going to go have a necropsy at the University at U of H and go see the pathologist there and see what happened. But my dog She said he was sick when she got him. He was sick and he was dying. My dog was in good health. It's my word against her word.
Follow up.
Sure.
Follow up, yeah.
I got to tell you, I've never heard of such a thing. This is just unbelievable. She actually let the dog die?
Yes. She didn't take him to the vet. Yep, he died.
Thank you.
Representative Sofakidis.
Have you been able to get another therapy dog?
You know, currently right now, I'm mourning. I'm traumatized. I eventually will, because there is a program somewhere in the state that deals with therapy dogs for vets. But I'm here to speak on behalf of those vets who cannot express their feelings or don't know how to express their feelings. And for those pet owners and people who we need to have people to be responsible for the life of your animal. And there was no way, what had happened, this procedure went on during, I think it was Thanksgiving, and the Keene Dog Rescue Center, that was booked up. I didn't know that. Everybody's booked up, but I've used this woman before, and I didn't think it would run into a problem, but I don't think she was aware of what my dog was going through. You know, it's like kind of like, you know, the nuances, you know, does your cat do this? Does your dog, you know, chew on toys? Does he scratch? Does he do this? She was saying he was barking, he was crying, he was bumping into the walls. And I know that he was in pain. He was pain while he was dying. No amount of money will bring it back, but I hope his sacrifice from this unscrupulous dog sitter will help other people, because we all need help. We all need to help one another. We all need to take care of one another. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, gay, straight, whatever. We all need to take care of one another. And this is an important part of our life.
Representative Howard, you had a question too?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Did she represent herself as a boarding facility, or was this an individual?
She was an individual, and I received her name from a company in Peterborough called Dogs on the Depot from Megan, and this woman had a card, and I used her because I couldn't find anybody else. And so having this bill would protect the consumer, you, me, and everyone else, from unscrupulous practices. And there needs to be a modicum. There needs to be, like when you go to a doctor, you fill out 10 pages of paper. What's your name? What's your address? Where do you live? What are your allergies? What's your problem? You fill out so many different things. I have a stack of papers that it's a profile. Does your dog like other dogs? Does he hate other dogs? Does he scratch? Does he bite? Does he go after kids? Does he go after this? There needs to be a form that these people, hopefully, if they're going to be a dog sitter in their home, you need to have a fill out a form. I never got a receipt. I paid this woman $1,200, just hands me a dead dog wrapped up in a pillow in a bed. And I'm like, I've been dealing with pain for so long. I am a Vietnam veteran. I used to react very abruptly and loudly because, you know, it's a trust issue. I trusted the government to take care of me. They haven't, and that's another story.
Mr. Shemet, how long did she have your dog in her facility?
I went in. I dropped him off at the 26th of November and picked him up last Monday.
Oh, so November, December. She had your dog for 5 months?
Let's see. So it would be November. So it's November. It's Thanksgiving. So it would be December and January and February. 3 months. 3 months and a few days.
Okay.
But she never really communicated, and I would communicate with her, and I thought she would maybe take the initiative, you know, when you see that something's wrong, they take the initiative to, get some dog food or take him to the vet. And I had told her that, over the last few times I was there, if he needs a problem, take him to the vet.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you for being here. I do have some documentation. Who do I leave it with?
You could leave it with Representative Minor. Thank you.
Okay.
And
Thank you,
I
everyone.
would like to call Marcus Gilbert. We can't use props in the room, so whatever you have, you're going to have to leave behind.
Wrong chair.
Good morning and welcome to our committee.
Good morning. My name is Marcus Gilbert. I live in Ware, New Hampshire. And Cash is the reason why I'm here. It's my dog. Cash has been missing now for 596 days due to the gross negligence of a dog kennel. You mentioned earlier about doing due diligence for a dog boarding facility. Cash was not just a normal dog or average dog. He was a professionally trained retriever who I kept at my home or with his trainer in Brookfield. And this particular weekend, he was with me. And we normally do not board him anywhere, but my wife, who is works for the state of New Hampshire as a advocate for foster care children, had an event that we were attending. And so we needed to put him in a facility to board him over the weekend. And so we reached out. My wife found this boarding facility 15 minutes from our home in New Boston and on Facebook. This facility had 5-star reviews. So it was a beautiful looking facility. We reached out to the facility and asked them if they had an opening available to keep my dog, who is an intact male, 22 months old, 90 pounds. And she said she did. And in fact, she said because she had not had a chance to vet him, that she was going to provide a private room for him to stay in while he was there. And it was just for 3 days. So we made arrangements. We provided her his vet records, which she didn't ask for, but we provided them anyway. We thought that was important. And we met her on Friday afternoon after I got off work, and we delivered Cash to her with his collar, his lead, his blanket, his toy. We provided the food that he would need for the 3 days that he would be there, and went over the instructions for feeding him. And she took our dog. And she told us that he would be well taken care of. She would provide photos and updates periodically throughout the weekend because she knew that this dog was the first time with her, and to make us feel safe and him, comfortable with what was going on. So we delivered Cash to her, and she took him, and we left. And we went to our event. It was in Vermont. So when we arrived in Vermont, we reached out to her to check on our dog. And she said, after a couple of hours, she responded and said that he was resting and was fine. The event that we went to was on Saturday, and so it was very busy and very low phone opportunities, and so we didn't hear from her then. And so we were returning on Sunday. We had asked her about picking him up on Sunday, but she said that she didn't have an afternoon pickup, that would have to be Monday morning. So, which was fine. We understood that. We respected that. And that was agreed upon on Friday, that when we dropped him off. So my wife was going to pick him up Monday morning, scheduled at 7:30, and return him back to our trainer in Brookfield, because he was Cash, just to let you know, he had received a junior title hunting test He had received a certificate for a senior title hunting test and was working on his master's. This dog, I could recall him hundreds of yards away with a whistle, voice commands, hand signals. This dog was highly trained. And so my wife left the house. Again, we live in Ware, and New Boston is where he was being kept. She was on her way en route, and we received a call from the kennel owner at 6:44 in the morning that Cash, she said, had slipped his collar and ran off. My wife was on site within 15 minutes of that. She was on site by 7:02. I was right behind her. I was getting ready to go to work, but I changed back into to go search for him. And really, at that time, I was very confused because this dog is not a dog that would run off. It's not his nature. And so we arrived on site. I got a very vague description of where he went. This place is not necessarily remote, but it is in the country, but there are a lot of houses around and places that he could have went to if he had been, if what had happened was true. So I arrived on site. She told me the general direction. She actually sent my wife in the opposite direction. I went in one direction, she went in the other. My wife arrived first, as I said, and so I immediately went searching for Cash. I had searched all day. We got Granite State Dog Recovery was contacted. In fact, the director of Granite State, one of the directors, lives right around the corner from this facility and also uses the facility as well. And so we had a poster, put together a flyer, and began to put it on social media and those type of things that they help out with. She also put a camera on the front door of the facility, which is the only entrance that I'm aware of, and asked the owner to put out food for the dog in case he returned. So we began that search. And after searching all day, walking over 20 miles on foot in the area, all through the area, talking to everyone that I could, every home that I could, I stopped back by the kennel and asked to speak with her again. This is Monday afternoon. And so we were speaking about what had happened, kind of going over where I'd been and things like that. And it's so confusing to me that I asked her if I could see the inside of the facility where she kept him, because I'm trying to understand what's going on with, why would he run off? And at that point, she told me that was not possible, that the place was dirty, and it's just after hours, there was nobody there. And she said that wouldn't be possible, that she did not allow that. I'd also filed a police report, and they had been out to investigate and talk to her about it, and of course, get the word out for my dog. So that was the first red flag that I had. The next day, it was suggested to me, we had left his blanket there hoping that he would come back to something familiar. And so I was at the facility it was suggested that I move it into the edge of the woods so that if he was scared, he would come there. So while I was there, a man approached me from out of one of the buildings and asked me if I was there to pick up a dog. And I said, no, my dog is missing from this kennel. And I said, do you work here? And he said, no, I live here. My wife is the owner. And I said, oh, okay. Have you seen this dog? Because I'm trying to get proof of life now. And he said, I wasn't aware of a dog being missing. So that's another flag. I mean, how can you not communicate some event like that to your spouse? I just find it hard to believe. So I took my stuff, and I felt like then that something is not right here. So on Wednesday, my wife and I were, we're desperate, we're hurting, because Cash, we had him, I'd raised him since he was 8 weeks old and had spent every moment with him, and this is just not making any sense. So my wife began to share on her Facebook page, that we were hurting, not naming any names, but kind of sharing what is going on. And then members of the community started reaching out to us, and they began sharing their stories of what was going on in this kennel, the filth inside the kennel. Their dogs being returned sick, and in some cases, one died shortly after they picked him up. Another person reached out that her dog was actually killed inside the kennel from a mauling. And I was sitting with Chief Brace of the New Boston Police Department at the time when I received the call about that. And he was defending her because this person is a selectman in the city of New Boston, so he works with her. And he was defending her, and I was trying to be understanding. And his words to me, once he found out about the killing in the kennel and a date and the fact that she received a ticket for it, which he was not aware of, and he confirmed it to me that it's true, that she had left another dog, a 7-month-old Sheltie, in the care, unsupervised, with a pit bull, and the pit bull killed the Sheltie, and she was a citation of $100 for that. She also lost in court because of that. So these are the type of things that we are not aware of. It's not going to be on a Facebook page. It's not going to be on a 5-star review. And there's no other way that we can find out and do due diligence of something like that going on. There was multiple other things that as the days went by that we were made aware of, such as another dog died in the care of her. She claimed he just fell asleep. That's what the owner said when they picked it up. And it was perfectly healthy when they dropped it off. My dog, you know, the hard part for me is, okay, I can understand a dog dying, but in my case, I had nothing because the dog was never seen again. Nobody ever, there was never a reported sighting. I put a $5,000 reward in the New Boston Beacon full-page ad, and I never received one call asking for anybody that may have had him, that may have thought about keeping him, to return him. I would pay for it, and I would gladly do that. But as of right now, I have never received one thing on that. So I had contacted an attorney, Trish Morris, here about this and asked her if she would consider my case. And she did, and we are pursuing legal action against this kennel. But there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that I could find. I contacted the Department of Agriculture. I contacted our police department, and he tried to find ways of doing an investigation. I contacted the animal control about going in there, and they said, just like the police department, we have to be invited in, and most likely she would decline. She declined allowing the police department to enter the facility for 11 days. She finally allowed them in, but and his response to me when he did talk to me, his response to me was that it was obvious it was cleaned up. So if there was a crime scene inside this kennel, it's no longer no evidence of it. So right now, I have no evidence of a dog. The police department basically tells me that without evidence of a crime, they can't do anything to investigate. And I'm asking for your help because in my case, I don't have closure. I don't know what happened to my dog. If he was there, if he was killed, if he was, as she said, run off, disappeared without a trace. And I'm just asking you to consider something that would allow us some protections for the dogs as well as the people that own the dogs, and ensure that this doesn't happen to somebody else, because I guarantee you it will again.
Representative King.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for sharing your truly horrific story. That was a real bummer to hear all that, but I thank you for sharing it. It sounds like you were dealing with some people of very low character, and the cynic in me can't help but to think that they sold your dog for a lot of money. I mean, maybe he ran off because the dog was so appalled by the conditions he was being kept in, or maybe it was killed by another dog. But I just feel like people like that could have easily been like, oh, this is a really valuable dog, and they know somebody who will pay $10,000 or $20,000 for a dog, and they just couldn't help themselves but to take it. Do you feel that there's any possibility that something like that could have happened to your dog?
Well, that's one of the first things I considered. I don't know for sure. I do know that this person, you know, and I don't know this, I'm just telling you what people have shared with me has had financial problems in the past. Again, Ch- New Boston Police Chief Brace wanted to perform an investigation. He said that we needed to get on her phone. He thought that she would have shared this information with someone else, but to get that, they had to have a subpoena. And unfortunately, he said that he didn't feel like he had enough to be able to get a judge to comply with, allow that to happen. So without that, you know, I can't say for sure, but I will tell you that the very weekend that this occurred, on that Saturday night, there was a dog kennel in Ware that was transporting dogs to New Boston to breed them. And fortunately for the owner of that dog, they had a GPS collar on it, and they found the dog and went and got it. In my case, she claimed he slipped out of his collar and ran off. So he didn't have any identification on him at the time, according to what she said. And so you know, if somebody found him, he would have had no collar. I did receive the collar back from them, and the way she had it, it was like there was no way that's going to hold this dog the way she had it, and he could have easily slipped out of it if she's not caring for it. The other thing that I have found this very odd is I mentioned that Granite State Dog Recovery put a camera on her front door. They left it there for 30 days. After 3 days, she was wanting them to remove it, but they didn't because they indicated that it was a minimum 2 weeks if they were going to do it, and she allowed them to keep it there. But I will tell you this, she never takes these dogs out for a bathroom break. I mean, they're in there for hours at a time, unattended. I can see it going in, I can see her coming out, and nothing in between. She claimed that she took my dog out 2 times that morning before she called us. So if she was expecting me to come and pick it up at 7:30, why was she out at 6:44 in the morning, or even before that, to be able to take my dog out? Because the videos don't support it. I have over 600 of them that show these dogs going in. And the weekends are even worse. You know, those are the type of things that are really disturbing. And I can't tell you what she did, knowing that she leaves them unattended for many days or many hours at a time. I suspect that the reason why I even considered boarding him at all is I was concerned about his water, because he drank a lot of water. I will tell you this, another episode that happened recently, and this has been since my dog went missing, is that there was another death in the kennel, and there was an autopsy performed, and this dog had died of bloat, which means she withheld water or food for long periods of time, and it died as a result of it. So I don't know if that possibly happened. This is in August of 2023. August 28th is when he went missing. So the heat was there. There's no ventilation in this dog barn. I mean, it's got windows, but if the heat had got to him and she was not providing water, then that could be a problem. I will say something else. I gave her 15 cups of food and he was to be fed 5 cups a day, 3 in the morning, 2 in the evening. I mean, we're on a regiment with him because of showing him. And so I went over this with her. And when I finally slowed down to evaluate what she gave me back 8 cups of food. So that means that she didn't feed him, or she didn't need to feed him for 2 days.
Thank you. I thank you for your story. I would just finish by saying I think they sold him, if I had to take a guess, but I don't know.
Representative Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I suppose that if you did sell the dog, it would be like trying to sell a stolen Rembrandt. I mean, this is a valuable dog. This is an AKA registered dog. I mean, to what extent? And I do agree with Representative Seth. That's probably what exactly happened. But what could you do with the dog?
Well, obviously at 22 months old and looking like he looked, I was already getting inquiries about breeding him. Of course, I wasn't interested in the breeding at that moment because I wanted to get his master level, because what that means is he would certainly be more valuable as a breeder but that's not the point for me. It's not about the money. It's about the fact that this person took my dog, didn't provide it. I paid her in advance, and she never offered to refund my money. She never gave an apology. She never said anything. She just basically said, when I walked up, it's like, he went over here, and I've never lost a dog, and it's like, this is the first time that I've ever experienced this, and so it's very it's very troubling for me.
Please take your seats, representatives. And Representative Howard, you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if this bill passes and this commission is gathered, what kind of regulations would you expect to come out of that study that would actually be able to control a person who is so careless or evil?
Well, I would like to see things that I have seen as a problem. Is, first of all, she's the only one running the kennel, and when she leaves, there's nobody there. Okay, these dogs are put in common areas. This is what happened to the Sheltie. Now, I don't know if this is what happened to my dog, because she claimed he had a private room, but she could have allowed him into a public space with other dogs when she just determined that he was not a threat. That is one thing. Maybe a minimum requirement for people to be on site. Another thing is I asked for proof of life. She claimed that she was going to provide me photos of him and things throughout his stay, and yet when I asked for him to give me anything, proof of life that he was alive after I dropped him off, she has ignored those requests. So I believe that security cameras on all areas of the kennel or all spaces where they could go would be also beneficial. Just minimum standards to be able to do it, because she operates this kennel, still operating this kennel, and there's been no, her website, once I saw the 5-star review, as I mentioned, there's been nothing posted on there since 2021. I didn't catch that at first, but I did after we started looking at it. And of course, I put a review on there. And I do know that she had, there's been other reviews that have been removed after they are put in there. So I do understand that. I did look at Yelp. There's some reviews on that, as well as Google. And so those are just areas where they can put stuff on there, but they're as my attorney said, they're easily manipulated. But there should be some minimum standards for care, because obviously when you pick up a dog and he's full of, I've seen photos of people have shared photos of their dog when they pick them up with sores all over them. And then she basically, in one case, the one that died and fell asleep, she wanted to bury the dog on her property, and they said absolutely not. And those type of things. And when they picked it up, the thing that was odd to them, that they struck them as odd, is she had bathed this dog. And so you just never know. You never know about people. You never know about things. Her extent of helping me has been just to sweep her property. She has just areas near her house. She never got out on the roads with me. She never posted on social media. She never shared it. She claims that she shared it with her customers, but that's the extent of it. I received no help. Again, I've had to go into legal action because this dog, I'd had over $20,000 invested in him, and not that I would take him back in a minute. I offered her to walk away from any lawsuit if she just told me what happened to him, and she refuses to answer that question.
Representative Bixby.
So sometimes one of the things that arguments that we hear against licensing or regulation is that because New Hampshire is a small state where people know each other, you would know if someone was was running a business that was not on the up and up or was not functioning well. Do you think that that's the case, or that this is a case where we do need to have some sort of state oversight?
Well, I do know that the community has reached out to me with their stories, and multiple ones. And I don't think that the community, obviously, people know about it, and I get contacted very occasionally now, but people are still searching for my dog. I put out hundreds of flyers all through the area. They know about what has happened here. And again, I posted a full page ad in the New Boston Beacon just asking for information, and nobody came forward. But I don't think the community or word of mouth is enough, because just like me, I'm from Texas. I've been in New Hampshire for almost 5 years, and I love it here. And so this was the first time I had reached out to find a kennel, and I did my due of what I thought was enough, but it wasn't enough. And now I'm sitting here talking to you about my missing dog.
Thank you. I'm sorry for your loss.
Representative Barber.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you so much for your testimony. I too have trained a lab for hunt trials. I know the amount of work and the relationship that you have with your dog, and your story is just heartbreaking. In regards to getting the community to know about a kennel, et cetera, not all of us are on Facebook. So can you think of any other way that you might have heard about this, this kennel, any issues that might have happened if you had not had that information? I mean, you didn't get that before, but to say that, you know, we are, you know, we contact each other, we people know because we live in a small state, you know, what do you think about that aspect? That
Well, I do believe that social media is an excellent way of communicating. I would like to think that there could be something, a website, for instance, if nothing else, to allow us to go and access whether a kennel has complaints against it. Because there's nowhere, I mean, they gave me a place that I could file a complaint, but there's nothing there. If there was a site where it could be voluntary for all, if a kennel wanted to be on this as a recommended kennel, because they perform this certain type of minimum expectations, that could be a good start. And it doesn't have to be something where you're regulating so much with licensing and things like that. But you know, if they're opening a dog kennel, then there ought to be, the expectation is that if you're going to work with the public, that we should have the right to go in and inspect the kennel if a dog is missing, or at least have the police department go in, because she wouldn't allow either one of us in.
Before you left your dog off, or when you brought your dog there, you were not able to see the space that the dog was going to be kept in?
I didn't go in because we had picked him up on a Friday night, and all of this was done during the day, that Thursday. And so I dropped him off on Friday afternoon, and we were on our way out of town. So she said that she has to schedule for us to be able to go into the kennel. And so that wasn't possible for us to go through, because she was, at the time that we dropped him off, she was also, people were picking up. So that was the way it explained to me that I was not going in to look around because I didn't make an appointment.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for coming and telling us your story. I'm really heartbroken for you on what happened. Is there a Ross Norwood? I'm sorry?
I said, I'm Ross. Don't let the name fool you.
Oh, sure. No worries.
My name is Ross Norwood. I live in New Boston as well. I'm here simply because I have somewhat of a unique experience in that I was a licensed pet vendor which is our term in the state of New Hampshire that encompasses breeders of a certain size, rescue shelters, et cetera. I ran a very large dog rescue out of my home in New Boston for 12 years, so I was licensed under the Department of Agriculture as a pet vendor and subject to those inspections and all of the rules and regulations that go with running a rescue in the state of New Hampshire. I closed my rescue in 2020 and started doing boarding. And from that moment on, from the second that I started taking care of people's beloved pets, whose hearts and families, were on the line, there was absolutely nothing, no oversight, nothing. As long as I had town approval, that's really the only thing that stands between anybody opening a boarding kennel. So it has been part of what I've done the entire time. I stopped taking new clients a couple years ago because this little side business has gone a little better than I expected it to go. It's been a little busier than I had hoped to be. So I don't take new people, but every single person that comes to me, I make sure that they are aware that the onus is on them because there's no help anywhere else. There's no oversight, no regulations asking for some sort of transparency, reporting of issues. There's nowhere that you can find that out. Being in New Boston, I know this other kennel. To speak to some of your questions about that, I know the person that owns this kennel. She is a select woman in our town, born and raised. It would have been very hard for anyone to find this information out. Anyone who dared to say anything on social media really got shot down by other people. I don't know how many of you are from very small towns in the state of New Hampshire, but New Boston is a very small town. And when the Sheltie got mauled to death, I did know about that through the grapevine, but it was only through the grapevine. And there were a few of us that thought, surely the news is going to get out now. I mean, she got a dog mauled to death. Surely people are going to hear about this. Nope, that was years ago. It was years before. From the day that this person opened this boarding kennel, Cash was my worst nightmare, along with the dogs that have been killed there. This person had zero experience with groups of dogs, zero dog training background. The only thing she had was that she was a dog owner herself, but she had no training, no experience, and she does doggy daycare as well. I don't do doggy daycare at my place. That is a whole different level of employees, oversight, getting groups of dogs to interact and play during the day and keep them safe. That's a whole different level. Even with my years of experience of doing that, I'm not willing to do that with people's beloved pets and risk anything happening to anybody's animals. So it would have been very hard for Marcus and his family to have found anything negative, even after a dog had been mauled to death. It didn't get out. It just didn't get out. Which was shocking to me. But so I'm here in support of this bill. Something needs to be done to have the oversight that we have over rescues, and then for it to be nothing when it's people dropping off their beloved pets. And you can do all the due diligence. They would never have found out what had happened there. And I just want to encourage the state of New Hampshire to move towards some sort of licensing or oversight.
Let me ask you, when you had your kennel, or
The rescue?
your rescue, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
What can you explain how often you were inspected, and what was what did they do during the inspections?
Well, it changed quite a bit over the years, but by law, I believe it still says that we are supposed to be inspected once a year. A lot of that oversight has now moved to all the paperwork has to be submitted to the state. So it used to be that they would come annually, count the number of dogs, make sure that the airflow was appropriate, that the place was clean, that the animals in my care had the appropriate vaccinations, that I was maintaining all the records that I needed to maintain. I was just talking to a rescue on the way here that had a question for me about something with the law, and it sounds like a lot of that paperwork now has been made online. It now has to be delivered to the state. But once a year, somebody was laying eyes on my facility, checking to see where the dogs were, how they were cared for, what the setup was like, the safety of my fences, the internal kennels, all of that.
And did you know they were going to be there at a specific time? They just showed up.
Nope, surprise inspection. Pet vendors in the state of New Hampshire are required to have open hours totaling 8 hours, and they must be between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. So if they show up and nobody's there, you can be fined.
Okay.
But it is a surprise inspection.
Okay. Representative King?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for coming and testifying today. It's really nice to get somebody with your experience on this issue.
Thank you.
I have kind of a multifaceted question, and that is when it comes to insurance. So, for example, we've seen that, online reviews can be manipulated. They're not reliable. If somebody's dog dies, it can be extremely difficult to get any proof that could be held up in court. So we can't really look to the government to maybe litigate the issue. But insurance is interesting because you can file a claim with insurance, and if the insurance company is constantly having to pay out a claim for somebody's dog that's been mistreated or died or something like that, even though there's no burden of proof that malpractice was done, insurance is going to constantly go up. The premiums are going to go up for that kennel because the insurance companies are constantly having to pay out. And I'm just wondering, is there such a thing as like an insurance company that would cover kennels and people's animals? And if there is, would you be in favor of like mandating insurance for kennels? I just think that would be an easier way, because eventually the premiums would get so bad that it would put them out of business if nobody would cover them. Imagine you have to have insurance and yet nobody will cover them. That's sort of a way of, hey, we don't have the proof, but where there's smoke, there's fire, and it could shut them down. What do you think about all that?
Well, it's using insurance as the regulation, right? Regulatory agency. I myself carry insurance. I think it would be crazy not to in the year 2025. We don't have any proof that this other person had insurance at all, which I think is just crazy. I mean, my place is small. I only have 6 enclosures now for kennel, and my insurance just for that, I don't do anything in anybody else's home or anything, is $1,700 a year. I've had no claims in 5 years. I did make a note of when Representative Howard asked about what you would look for in a commission or something that is one of the things. I mean, without trying to go into the level of oversight that the Department of Agriculture has for pet vendors, trying to think where that kind of in between. Yes, mandating some sort of reporting, so the onus is upon the kennel, the entity, and requiring insurance. So there is it would provide recourse of some sort, absolutely.
Follow up?
Oh,
Okay, so can you tell me what kind of insurance? Is it like State Farm? What insurance
Yeah.
covers that sort of thing?
So, it's a little trickier for those of us that have kennels on our home properties, as mine is, and the other one in New Boston. Insurance companies really don't like that. So USAA said no thank you to that, even though my insurance for my business, because it's in a separate building, separate from my home, covers everything. Like even if that building burnt to the ground, my homeowners has nothing to do with that. So State Farm, there are kennel specific. Obviously, this is not a unique. A lot of people do boarding out of their homes, whether it's from a dog sitting level to as large as this barn property in New Boston. So there are entities out there. Hanover was my insurer for my rescue days for quite a while, but I did have to switch. I'm sorry, State Farm is my homeowners. Hanover is still my kennel insurance.
So if we mandated some sort of kennel insurance, it exists.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, so thank you for coming in.
My pleasure.
I think that essentially the bill we have before us now is not, is for a study committee to figure out what to do. I don't think we're going to figure out what we're going to do. I know we're not going to figure out the exact path we need today, but assuming we are able to pass this study committee bill, would you be willing to come in to testify to the study committee because it sounds like you have a fair amount of expertise in this area?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
okay, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in deference to Representative Bixby's sort of refocusing us on what this is about, I do have a sort of a two-sided question about if regulation were to come out of this commission, would it benefit the kennel industry or business, and would it equally or benefit even more the clientele?
Are you asking me if government oversight is of value? Not a loaded question at all, but absolutely. It as a rescue, it became something that I could say to people that because there are many, many people operating and doing rescue type things and flying animals in from islands and all of that, they don't even know that it's illegal in the state of New Hampshire, but it is. But it became something that I, as a rescue, could say, I am a licensed rescue in the state of New Hampshire, abiding by all rules. So for me, I felt like that was a value or something that I could provide to an adopter walking into my door. I can still tell you the Department of Agriculture's number by heart. Like, if you have any questions about anything that has to do with my, licensing, my background, what I've done, any complaints that have been filed against me, there is an entity that you can reach out to. And being able to tell somebody that, I thought was a value add, right? Rescues don't have an organization in the state of New Hampshire, kind of like the New Hampshire Federation of Humane Organizations, who I'm sure most of you are familiar with, the Fed. We don't have an entity that self-licensing, self-policing, or provides any sort of level of rules or regulations or anything that they abide by. But yeah, so it certainly was something that I would say to people to hopefully give them some comfort that I wasn't just a fly-by-night, I got some puppies in the trunk of my car kind of thing. From the kennel customer, I think so. It would be something that they could ask, and make sure that they're licensed. I mean, even, let me just really one quick, the head of our planning department in the state of New Hampshire is a licensed pet vendor in the state of New Hampshire because she's a lab breeder, and she breeds enough labs that she rises to the level, I believe it's 30 per year now, to become licensed. So she is a licensed pet vendor in the state of New Hampshire. And one of the things that initially that she said to Marcus Gilbert with Cash was to call the state and make sure that this kennel was licensed. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, she is licensed, so she must know. Like, I was in those laws often enough, being somebody that was licensed, to realize that there were no laws that had anything to do with boarding kennels. She was a licensed pet vendor and had no idea that there was no licensing for boarding in the state of New Hampshire. None. That's the I assume that the average customer that comes to me doesn't realize that, but it was very eye-opening to me to realize that even somebody at that level hadn't put two and two together to realize. She said to me, do you know what I have to go through to be, yes, actually, I do know what you go through because I did it for 12 years. And she said, you mean to tell me that anybody can open a boarding kennel with absolute, yep, that's exactly what can happen. It has happened.
So, a question for you. If there were to be some licensure or requirement for insurance or any other
Reporting.
other reporting or anything like that, should it be restricted to, say, somebody who boards more than 3 dogs a month, or is there a volume that makes sense, or it should be just if you take 1 dog in, you should go through the whole
Yeah.
licensure?
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Because we have rover.com now where people, well-meaning people, people that believe they really know dogs and understand dogs because they've owned dogs their entire lives. Let me assure you that is not the way to, that will not give you everything you need for understanding groups of dogs and interactions of dogs. And certainly we have those, like the gentleman here earlier, the horror stories coming out of these individual homes. That's tough. Where that number would be, certainly I feel like even though my place is small, it's a separate building. It's a business. It is a business. I run this, it's not the dog in my living room kind of thing, 1 dog at a time. Where that number is, I'm not sure that I can answer that. I don't think that every single individual person needs to be licensed. That's my personal opinion. Some onus is on the buyer beware.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very, very much for your taking the time to come and speak with us about this bill. We appreciate your background and expertise in this issue. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this bill today? Seeing none, may I have the blue sheet from over there? Thank you, Representative Minor. And we have 5 people in support of SB 50. With that, I'm going to close out the hearing for SB 50. Okay. those were our three Senate bills that came to us. I don't anticipate any other legislation coming to us from the Senate. We have this time now from now. Well, it was scheduled at 11:15, so pretty close. We have this time until we would like to be finished, probably around noon or a little past that, to discuss any of the bills that we heard this morning. What we think we need to do with them, whether we need amendments. I know SB 302 already has an amendment that was offered by Senator Pearl. I don't know if everybody got a copy of that or not. I don't think so, but that's where we are. So we are free now to discuss any of the three bills that we heard this morning. Representative Bixby.
So I actually need to take off because I have something that I is starting at noon. I'm not going to make it to that, but I'm going to have to take off fairly soon. So I just want to put in my 2 cents on each of the bills, and then I'll have to go.
You only have 2 cents?
Well,
Per bill.
Per bill. Oh, okay, okay.
Per bill.
That's 6
And
cents,
it's
okay.
a substantial part of my salary.
Yes. All right.
So I think that all of these bills deserve and ought to pass, or not to pass with the 302, ought to pass with amendment. I think that it is very straightforward to do a study committee. I think that from what we've heard, there is clearly a need. I think that in terms of the bison and elk bill, I am having heard that there is in fact a more oversight in rules than there is listed in statute. I am comfortable with that level, so I think that can go forward as is, unless we hear something in the interim from the department. And as for 302, I voted for it the last couple of times it's come through. It's obviously just a housekeeping bill.
Yeah.
It's a pity that the housekeeping has been made hard for us.
Mhm.
So that's what I have to say about these.
Any other comments from any other committee members based on what you heard this morning regarding Representative King?
I just want to concur with Ranking Member Bixby. I support all three bills. The background check one we're not litigating whether or not there should be background checks. It's already in statute. It's just a housekeeping bill. And then the committee, I'm fine with the committee because we're not actually making any rules or laws about what should be done. It's just to discuss. And I think the case has been made clear that we need more discussion to come up with some sort of safeguards for pet owners.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? I also concur with Representative Bixby, our ranking member, on the fate of these three bills. I believe with SB 302, we have the amendment to do an OTPA. Certainly, the sale of uninspected bison, red deer, and elk meat on SB 229 is pretty straightforward. And the stories that we've heard about some of these so-called kennels is pretty compelling to have us gather one Senate member and 3 House members together to figure out what would be the best path forward with regard to dealing with these very, very difficult and disturbing events that have happened in our state. So with that, I would appreciate, I would exec them out today, but I would like to have more of our committee members involved in that and have them review the testimony that was given this morning. So with that, I would propose, that we meet again Tuesday next week to exec these 3 bills. And we also have had the opportunity for next week to have a presentation from New Hampshire Food Alliance on their strategic plan for food being sold, produced, sold, whatever in New Hampshire. So we can arrange that all for the morning of next Tuesday. And if that is okay with everybody. And then, since that would probably be the last time we as a committee would meet to do, work on legislation until the fall, I would propose that we celebrate the work that we've done by going out to lunch after, huh? Hey? Okay. All right. So with that, I think that we can adjourn early, and that's the plan, is to meet back here next Tuesday morning. Probably around, I would imagine, 9:30, 10 o'clock or something like that. And the New Hampshire Food Alliance presentation is scheduled for 10:30. So I think we can exec these three bills probably within the half hour. So I would say that we should meet back here at 10 o'clock next Tuesday, and hope you all have a great rest of the week.
Madam Chair, question
Sure.
regarding
Representative Scully?
the amendment to 302.
We'll get copies of that to everybody.
Wonderful, thank you.
Representative Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's been a great experience, and I've enjoyed being on this committee, and we've got along very, very well. We will soon, my wife and I will soon be processing animals, and I want to invite you all down to our farm to see just how it is that we take care of dispatching and processing animals. So when we get going, which will probably be in another few weeks, I'll let you know, Madam Chair, and perhaps you can notify the rest of the committee.
Sure. Thank
Thank you.
you. Be happy to. Any other questions or comments for the benefit of the committee? Seeing none, I invite a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Okay. Second? All right. Second. All those in favor? Aye. See you next week.